How's it, guys? Who's the join will be starting soon. Hey, David, hey, Lavina, hey, John. Hopefully you can hear us all right.
Hello.
Is it?
All good.
Good yourself?
All good.
Everybody, yeah, loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's get started in a few minutes, wait for everyone to settle in, and then we'll kick off. Okay. Sorry.
Sadly, to be able to come down to audience.
Sorry.
This is the common background. So, what?
This is Matrix. Filtering through the stock videos that are on. I've started actually using AI generated videos in a couple of my sessions.
AI generated videos.
I've
only done the images.
Yeah, sorry, does pull it with that purely AI generated, but you also got ClipChat.
Okay.
ClipChat with Copilot can generate you videos using stock videos.
Nice.
So you get highly realistic videos that can be like 2-3 minutes long.
12 fingers, 11 fingers.
They do struggle with the fingers though. Or with people just passing by each other, some more for the swim garden.
And you see what guys have been doing? They've been wearing 3D printed fingers.
Yes, an extra finger.
So that if they get caught with something, no, that's now generated. Like there's too many things.
So then it just wearing the
Yeah. That's crazy. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May edition of JoziPUG. I cannot believe it's May already.
No.
Time is absolutely flying. No, it's using the round table.
Ah, that's fine.
Yeah, there's a problem with the room system. The guys were supposed to come out, so we're using this one for me. Yeah, so just quickly, logistics. We are recording the session.
I'm not sitting right in front of this camera.
You are.
Yeah.
But you can just sit in the second row and people won't be able to see.
There we go, yeah. Shots fired. It's very, very short.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are uploading the videos to our YouTube channel. So if you do miss out and you want to catch up on the previous ones, well, welcome to it. So we're covering the news. We're then going to be covering Power Apps components, everything deep dive. Dennis is then going to do a tech tip, and then we're just going to open up the floor. Just one thing, thanks to Ukavuma for sponsoring tonight. Pizza Perfect. Yes,
From Zealand.
Okay, so thanks, friends. We really appreciate it. Let's jump into the news. So, first thing, it is Microsoft Build next week. Okay, there are going to be some great announcements coming out. So definitely check it out. Just go to aka.ms/MS Build and you can register. You can put a backpack together with the sessions that you want to join. And then you can even catch the sessions afterwards for a couple of weeks. You can still go back and see the one there. But there's going to be some really exciting announcements coming up from across the stack, even some in Power Platform as well. Okay. Check that out. Next one. They have enhanced the undo and redo feature in Power Apps Advanced. So now you can undo up to 100 actions. It's also going to tell you, if you see there, when they click, it tells you the step that you've done. So if you add a component, it's going to say remove component. So you can at least start to see what you're undoing and redo. In the past, you could only undo like 3 or 4 steps. You can now go up to 100. So that's great to see. And it is a lot more reliable than it was.
Yeah, although I think if you have to go back 100 steps, I think you've got another issue.
Absolutely, yeah. Wow. Other announcements. We finally launched the Power Platform and Copilot Studio Architecture Center. So now you can go and get all the best practices, guidelines from an architecture perspective. This is fantastic. There's lots of great architectures inside there. So if you want to understand how to do things according to best practices, great place to start. Also, if you have developed a solution, your own best practices and that, you can submit it through to the platform as well. That can be reviewed and then added in there. So everyone can leverage off. I'm a firm believer in leveraging the work off of others. Why reinvent the wheel? So, and we've also got to give back. So if you design something that's really cool, publish it, share it inside there. People will definitely appreciate it. With the new homepage as well in Power Apps, we've changed a couple of things. The planned prompts, we've given a much larger window now. So you can really put in a lot more effort when you're designing that first starter prompt. We've also brought a lot of the new prompts in there at the top just to help get you inspired on how to put these things together.
I'm not going to rename plans in terms of.
Not that I know. Okay. But anything is possible.
Exactly.
You will see.
There's the asterisk.
Yeah, plans is confusing some people
Yes.
because they confuse it with planner.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's not. To see this, you just need to turn on the new homepage experience. There should be a toggle in the top right-hand corner that can enable it. And some more security settings we've added in. So now in the security setting, you can go and turn on auditing in the platform. You used to be able to do it in the environment settings. There was an option there under audit that you could go and enable it in the past. Now you can do it directly from the security center in the new admin portal. By default, it automatically audits all the security tables and fields. So those are audited by default. You can still go in and choose which tables you want to turn on.
I guess you can access directly now like this.
Yes.
Because previously you had to go through dynamics and.
Yes, yeah, it was not meant to try and do. So
Nice.
everything's inside of the security center.
Excellent.
Another one, Git integration is now generally available. There's been a lot of workarounds to get the integrations working in the past. Now you can set up Git directly from a source control perspective. So it's just going to help those Fusion teams. So those developers who are holding the visibility of the code and to push it out in a more reliable. Last one, also in the security center, we added the feature to prevent data exfiltration. This is now generally available in the center. So this can just help with data leakage and prevent people from accessing information that they shouldn't have access to. So you can do this on an environment level and on an application level, depending on the type of data that you're working with. And you can decide what type of features you want to enable or disable and prevent that from happening. So this is all going to be underneath the admin center in the security settings. You can go in and those policies. So if you don't have a security role, you try and sign in, it's going to prevent access. So you can go through that whole experience. Then you can see that you can't access it. You go and check the unapproved. So if you want to pull it in, won't allow you to put it in unless you are the right, have the right levels inside it. Other one I also picked up is now within Power Apps. If you're using a service account for authentication to SQL, that service account can now be shared, or the password can be shared amongst anyone who utilizes the app.
Oh, thank you.
So in the past, I mean, in Power Automate, you've always been able to do that. But from a Power Apps perspective, everyone had to have the service account username and password. Now you're able to share that out. Any other news that anyone picked up on? Yeah, perfect. But that's it from the news. And then, David, you're going to be covering the next portion around components, correct?
No, Tata is.
It's Tata. Okay.
Yeah.
Tata not here, it's Tata online. Okay, so it's going to be just now. David, I don't know if you just want to take over and you do it from your side, possibly. You can run your session and then Tata can come after you.
TikTok.
Yeah, sure. Give me a second. You know, you just cut my preparation time in half.
And just by the by,
Many
Tinus is the TikTok. That's what I heard. Did you also hear that? Tinus was doing the TikTok.
Yeah, I don't know Tinus is, but he's welcome to.
Tian is doing the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So, hold on a second. I just want to open everything up here and.
I'm moved from that seat. Now look at the angle of that camera.
Yeah,
It's just,
It follows the last voice.
yeah, I can imagine that.
yeah, it's a pretty full room. I can see manual.
One shiny view.
Money penny.
These downlights on this shiny view of light.
All right, so just busy. Sorry, guys, give me 2 minutes. Just want to close. Tian, do you maybe are you ready to jump into the tech tip on that side? That's a lot better.
It's going to move around.
Focusing on the other.
Oh, no. Oh, that's you.
There, if you can join the Teams meeting and then present inside Teams, then you can plug this in if you want. You have an HDMI. No, but we, for the remote participants, just so you need to join that.
He's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone on call.
It's
Sound on me.
that's something we can ask for other UGs as well.
What,
That's
the
fine.
roundtable? Yeah, yeah.
I think we can do something like hybrid for Jovo getting stuff.
Yeah,
It's always an issue with the camera and the mic.
yeah, then just request this from the guys. This one's usually sitting in the room now, so. Just check and make sure that's through there.
Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Okay, thanks everyone. Sparse track, yeah. Well, I'm going to be lost, but
Sorry.
not a problem. Okay, so I'm Jonas from Mint. Just doing a quick tech tip. Was kind of planning to judge by how much time I've got left, how much I'm showing, but I'll just try and keep it short now.
So you got,
It looks like you've got lots of time.
Yes, okay. All right, so I'm just quickly going to go through how to share a connection reference, which is something that's not in the current UI, how to get that done, and then just how to make your item history look a bit spicier. Awesome. Right, so I've got a solution here, and following best practices, I've created a connection reference to SharePoint, which I'm using in my flow, which is very nice here. And now, unfortunately, I can't work on the project anymore, and I want to transfer this work to a colleague of mine. So I've got a Tian the second set up here, and here he is. And I've shared the workflow with him. Awesome, he can now go and work on the workflow. Except if he opens this up now, he won't be able to see the connection reference that it is using. So it will do one or two things. I found that a bit inconsistent. So sometimes it will just create another connection reference for you, which the first user then can't see, or it will just throw an error and not work. So I'm not going to open this up now because it's going to break my workflow. Yeah, so here is our connection reference, and you would think I can just go in here and have a share button or advanced or a share button. There's nothing there. So you have to hack around a bit to do that. And the way I found to do that is through the old Dynamics interface. So a quick way to get to that interface is just to go to your advanced settings in the settings menu. That opens up.
Okay.
I'm convinced the moment you share your screen through Teams, everything slows down. It's a feature, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not a bug.
Yeah. Right, so to get to your solutions, everything inside of it, so this little drop down into settings, you can go to your customization and solutions, find the solution that you're working with. And under that, you will see everything that's set up. So there's my connection. And if I open that up, now we have a share button. It actually works.
That's very cool.
So I'm just going to go find my Tian the second that I've created. So, just give some permissions here. I can share, read, write, etc.
You have to be an admin to be able to do this, right? Or can you? And
Uh,
is it just that the solution is shared?
I think if you have access to it, you should be able to share. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think so. All right, so now I've shared it, and if I go back to my down the second, and I refresh this page, I should now have a reference to add to the line.
Okay.
There we go. Now I should add it, and now I can use it, and I can actually run my flows by ranking.
Nice.
Sure.
That's very nice.
That was a big headache for us for a long time. Whenever you move from one person to another one, or from a service account to your own account to service account, you lose all your connections active. So yeah, this works a charm.
As well.
Yeah. And the second part, and this is actually the flow that I have in there, back here. So that workflow that I have is using a list here. And it's kind of how you would normally do an item history, kind of like have text created by who on this date, modified or approved, whatever. To make it a bit nicer, and I found this, one of the clients I worked at, and one of their developers built it this way. I thought this was quite neat. I've started using in my solutions as well. So let me just take this workflow. So what it's doing, it's still showing the same information, but it's just adding some icons next to it, which makes it a lot easier to see what's happening. So this is just going to add 3 little events to that item. Just need to specify that ID number 1. So basically, when it's kind of mimicking as I would have done approval, so I get some details, I update the item, mimicking approval, get the details again, update again, etc. So if I go to my list now, it looks like this, which I think is a not kind of neater way of doing it. And then if you don't want to show it in your list as a column, you can always show it as a pop-up. So to add a pop-up to there, I just modified the go. You can
That's
just
fancy.
sorry.
That's fancy.
Yeah, so you can just add a div tag, which is a pop-up. Specify what the field is that it should reference. In this case, the item history, and where it will pop up, etc. You can find this just Google for pop-ups in a
It's really cool.
inside of a list. Then if I hover over it,
That's cool.
there it shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't want to show this in your view, then you can just hide it.
Yes.
This will be public, right? Like we can find this somewhere. Because this is cool.
It is.
Yeah, I can very easily just share it as well.
This is
Now I'm speaking more about the item history column, the flow that you did there.
Yeah, I can share
wonder
that in the chat as well. I mean, this is it's just pure items. There's nothing funny here. So basically what I do, I just put it into a compose. So 3 lines with icons next to it, and then I update my list item.
And your column type is a multi-line.
Yeah. And plain text, there's no funny
plain
text.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh, it's not even
just out
mentioned.
of so plain text, but just out of interest that you make the multi-line unlimited length as well.
No.
Okay, just that might be one thing you might want to have a look at, because I think if you resubmit this flow a few more times, it's gonna error out. I think there
Yeah,
is
so
a
this-
line on a multi-line.
Yeah, so this one caters easily for 3 sets of lines. And obviously, if you expect a workflow that has 100 steps in it, then you'll have to look at that times. Yeah.
That's cool.
This is cool.
Cool. Yeah. So hopefully the other presenters are ready now. So
Perfect.
Yeah,
Robert, you ready?
that's it, yeah.
Oh, something else?
Yeah.
Oh, second there. Perfect.
I heard David read the sound relief.
That's very nice, Tian.
Thanks.
You just need to join the Teams meeting. You need Wi-Fi.
Yes, let me just.
I'm on the Teams meeting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
You can go ahead.
You go, Mike? No, Mike?
It depends on how loud you talk. We don't need it for the Teams call.
It's fine. Yeah. I think I'll just project my voice as much as I can. Excuse me. I also have a bit of a flu. Also super excited to be here. I thought I'd make a very informative session, Power App components, and also share a few stories about how I actually started my Power App development journey. Tell you a bit about myself and how I go about solving problems in a more modular, a more reliable, usable, and robust way. How's that for an iteration? And yeah, let me just give you a bit of a background. So my name is Tapus. I am a Power Platform developer at EY. Before that, I was at PwC, and right before that, I was with Kariga and IQ Business. If anything, to be very honest with you guys, I think my role should be something along the lines of tech consulting. I'm basically these consultancy firms. And working with these people, I've learned a thing or two. I've learned how to be very particular with what you build, because what you build gets seen by hundreds, if not thousands of people. And brand reputation is everything. Now, if you build from the bottom up, and if your foundation is very modular, it's done very well, you can set yourself up for success. Now, I've learned how to do this through the use of components. So we're going to be exploring a few things on Power App components. I will be moving to the next slide, like that. Yeah. For those who do, or those who don't know, talk about what components are, their purpose, a few example applications, and the actual component library. So in layman's terms, what components are, they're basically building blocks to your apps. So they're like mini apps, and they're like very modular, and they're basically what you use in order to make sure that your apps are very robust, make sure that your apps look good from the beginning and they look the same throughout. Because the great thing about them is that you can not only just use your components throughout your screens, which is this apps, but you can use them throughout different apps. So for example, if you have something that is very static or something that looks the same throughout different apps, you can have that in different applications that you have in your environment, which is pretty cool. Their purpose obviously is to promote modularity, to promote reusability, to promote the use of specific parts of your app and making sure that everything looks good. I have a few example applications that I'll be showing you, but before we get to that, let me tell you a quick story of how I actually got to discover the importance of it. So as I moved to PwC, which is pretty cool, I started working with a couple of designers. I came across a problem that was our firm was very pedantic about how they want things done. And I mean really pedantic. Like text should be this big, spacing should be this big. And you can only imagine if you have to manage like 20 plus apps, how crazy that is. So we noticed that components were a thing, but they were not standardized. And I reached out to my friend. I was like, I think we could actually make this process a lot easier. So we sat down and he gave me a couple of Figma designs. The great thing about Figma is that it looks great. It's very easy to build these things. But when you have to build them in Power Apps, not everything is possible. So me sitting there as the dev, I'm like, how the hell am I going to build these things? We sat down, we built a couple of components for them. So we had a footer, we had a header, we had quite a few search bars and filter planes that they would be using throughout the entire organization. And we had like a navigation pane, which is standardized. We had these used. Well, first, we sent this out to business, and they approved it after a couple of tries and remakes and whatnot. We had these approved, and then these were used in most of the abstract. I think that actually makes a lot of sense and makes life a lot easier for developers who are right there. So are kind of becoming next, because to be honest, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And if there's anything that I'd like you guys to take away from this, is not to reinvent the wheel. So that was a quick recap, a quick story of how I was able to work cross-functionally with developers, with other designers and the rest of the business. And that's how it worked out. So seeing that everything is hidden behind CI and basically not allowed to show you what I worked on, here's just a quick overview. So basically the headers would look something like this. Top left of the screen, the logo, with like a home button where you can navigate back home. The middle would be like a little menu item. Well, this kind of depends on the layout that you're going to have this visible, you can have it hidden, depending on whether you have a side panel or not. And then on the right side of the screen, the great thing about this is build it once. Side navigation panel, pretty cool. I think this is still a modern look. I don't know about you guys. Is this still in? Is this still cool?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we still use side navigation panels, and usually we have a footer, and maybe one of my favorite pop-up for the delete and your edits and whatnot. And yeah, I learned also something cool about the on-start and how you can have everything on your on-start. You can have your business colors, you can have all your icons that you're going to use, also you reference everything right there and then. And you can have everything that you use. Just make sure that you have what you require there, and then you can easily just, just call your functions, which is pretty awesome, if you ask me. It is a bit pedantic making that, but yeah, I think it's worth it. So here are the pitfalls that I'd like you guys to avoid during responsiveness. It's very easy to avoid responsiveness. Please don't. I've learned that it's very important to build responsive first. Being able to sit down and learn how to build everything with the idea that the next person might be looking at your app on a mobile phone.
Might be a basal.
Yeah. Yeah, on the tablet. People still do use tablets. So testing for responsiveness is very important. And I must admit, I have fallen into the trap of liking how things look on the desktop view. Tested, like, oh, doesn't look the way I expect. Overcomplication, avoid this. I think sometimes building certain things in Power Apps can in itself be overcomplicated. So complicating that on top of that just makes things complicated. And inconsistency. I think consistency is a lot more important than the speed at which you develop. Getting things right from the beginning when you fundamentals right. Getting that out, because this is going to be really so many times. It's crucial. So there's like 3 things that I like to avoid: responsiveness, publication, and inconsistency in our apps. And where to start? So this is basically my mind map of how usually I build that. Kind of depends what you're going for. That's like an example of a search pane, a filter pane, and whatnot. So basically, you have something like that up there. Side panel. I usually start working on. I like my side panels with icons, and I like them responsive. So as soon as you click on one of the icons about, you should be getting what you're doing. So it's your home page, that's your list, that's your folder. I guess that's also nice to have. And also, when you're working with buttons, it's very important that this button doesn't always. The button would look like it's on primary. When it's disabled, it might look like the normal Microsoft button. And when it's in a different state, so just make sure that when you do work on components, you don't go in all states. A filter is always kind of nice to have, but not always really necessary, and it is also nice to have. I am looking forward to the time in tech where we don't have to build like this. Like a lot of apps like this now. And closing off where I learned, and with your turn to learn. Shane Young is a great resource for me, I think, for a lot of people. So Razor is also a very great resource. And the Microsoft Learn articles and whatnot. So actually going through the documentation is so I don't know what's happening to me, but I'm not that much of a reader as I used to be. So usually I skim through the stuff here and I brought a bunch of video on how to do something. That's a bad habit that I'm trying to get out of my system. But irregardless, I think these are great places to actually start. And if anything, if I were to put a cherry on top, I think the best place to also get answers to questions that you might have is to start asking people. And yeah, I think that saves a lot of time and usually we have this imposter syndrome. Don't want to reach out. So yeah, that's about it. And once again, my name is Taco. If you want to connect, that's me. That's a little tag. That's my LinkedIn. I haven't tested this QR code. I hope it works.
That's interesting. That's what the rest of the tech.
I'm trying to know.
This is works, it works.
Yeah.
What other dodgy things does it do?
It's like a snap page thing. You scan it and see the face on it.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Any questions for Tom?
Yes.
Any questions? That is good.
Those online? Anything there? Perfect.
Just me talking.
Thanks so much, man.
That's awesome. Chat was the first time speakers about it, right?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
So that was awesome. Very well
You're
done.
going to see it at the booth.
I might use
It's awesome.
You've got a name.
Good.
Yeah. Hey, David, are you ready on your side?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, let me just switch over the video.
Cool. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yay.
This is very good.
Let's see.
Online you can. Now you can.
Perfect. Okay, David.
Can you see it?
Lovely speakers.
Yeah.
Good. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to be taking you through error handling in Power Automate, and I think it's something that everybody can do a little bit better. The problem is if your error handling in flows are not done correctly, these things break and you don't know about it, and then ultimately the first time you know about it is when the business screams at you, and that's ideally not what you want to do. So the default way that Microsoft reports on these errors are actually quite loose, if I can call it that. You might get a summary at the end of the day that says these are your flows that failed for the day. But by that time, a lot of the times it's so difficult to go back and look at those things and understand what if the data was affected. It's a lot of the times it just gets ignored in any event. So what I'm going to be showing you is a very basic app. We've got a leave table, nothing serious. It's basically just going to be for demonstration purposes to actually trigger a flow. So there's nothing really in here. Then we've got two flows. The one is the event flow and the other one is the child flow. So what I want to show you is if you do ideally, and this is the way I like to think about it, is to split the logic from the trigger. So you use your child flows for as a function. So you use that to actually do the computation and all the calculations and all of these sort of things you want to do. And then you simply use the event flow or the trigger flow to call that. And why that's also useful is you might want to call that piece of logic from different flows or different events. And then you can easily do that if you split the logic into child flows. Just, you know, as per Tata's session as well, if you get the architecture right in the beginning, it makes your life a lot easier going forward. So ultimately what this flow, the child flow, is doing is it's just going to do a simple check. In this case, it's always going to be true. And just to start off with, and then it's going to update that leave record with the status reason of approved. So we're just going to start off with that, and then we'll work ourselves into the situation where we're actually getting errors, and then how to troubleshoot these or how to set up the flows to handle these things better. So you'll see that that's the child flow. The record event flow, in other words, that's the one that triggers when you create the record, when you edit the record. And there might be multiple of those things that you want to trigger in different situations or circumstances. And they could then trigger the same child flow. Right, so my event flow is just called record event. It's for the leave table, and it's when it's created. So you can also see, just from a naming convention, you can easily see what this flow is doing. You know, it's triggering on a record event for the leave table, and it's on creation. So all that this is doing, it's simply saying when a leave record is added, we're calling this child record, and there's still some of the stuff I didn't want to actually show you yet, which is what I was cleaning up a minute ago. All right, so if I go and create a new leave record, let's give this a test. Let's delete that. And we say we want a new record, and let's do sick leave. And let's be honest and say it's sort of sick leave. Right, if we're going to record event, on this tab over here, we can see that that triggered 5 seconds ago, and seems like it ran fine without issues. All that it had to do was really call the child flow, so that's fine. And then for the child flow, that also ran a few seconds ago. And this got the data from the parent flow, it parsed the data, it got the leave record ID, and it used that to run the condition, which in this test case, it's always going to evaluate it true, and it updates that leave record with the ID it got from the parent record. So all of that is working exactly the way we want it to. But we all know how things go. Things don't always go the way we want it to. So let's say, for an example, there's something that goes wrong in the logic or in the data that gets passed to this function, and now we start getting errors. So now we want this flow to fail. What's the easiest way to make a flow fail? I'm going to tell it to divide by 0. It's not only the easiest, it's also the only way. So it feels like there's a function missing that says error, you know, that you just want to generate an error in flow, but there isn't one currently. So this is the way that, and I've spoken to Microsoft about this as well, and it's almost like this is the unofficial way of generating an error. So I think when Microsoft look at the backend logs and they see all of these division by zeros, they must think that the public or, you know, don't understand mathematical equations very well. But anyway, so what we're going to do now is we'll see that the previous record would have been updated and it was marked as approved. We're now going to do another test. Let's just delete that one. I'm going to apply for more sick leave. We're going to go to the event flow, refresh that. We see it's triggering, but it's still running. And if we refresh this, it's going to carry on running. Why? Why is this taking so long? Because the child flow failed and the parent flow doesn't know about it. So it's waiting for it patiently, very patiently, more patiently than most parents would. But what's happening over here is the child failed 31 seconds ago. It only took 200 milliseconds to fail, so it failed pretty well. But parent flow doesn't know about it. So if we go into this, you'll see that it's just simply telling us that attempts to divide by 0, which is not allowed. We can see the exclamation mark over there. The next action didn't trigger, so it just stopped there. Nothing further happened. Nothing is going to happen. Eventually, the parent flow is going to time out, and it's going to say it didn't receive a response. But that's essentially it. And you won't know about this until you get a flow from Microsoft a couple of hours later that says this flow failed 200 times in the past day, and then you don't know where to start. So if all of this sounds familiar, the good news is there's a solution to how you can structure these flows in order to prevent that from happening. Right, so let's go and edit the parent flow and let's start there. So first thing we want to do is we want to create a variable in this flow to make it easier to just keep track of the different error messages. So we're just going to create a variable in the parent. Nope, not set one. I want to first initialize one. And we're going to call it var error message. We're going to say that's a string, and we're going to say error running flow. And there's a function where you can get the flow name. I'm just going to copy it in here. So get all the square brackets right. I'll show you later how you can get to it. It's called a workflow function. So in the flow, there's a workflow expression that gets information about this flow. And that's got a property called tags, and then there's flow display name. So that's an easy way to get the name of the current flow. So this is just a sort of generic catch-all error that's going to tell you that this flow has failed. Then we're going to add scope items around all the pieces of logic. So we're going to add a scope over here. And the scope makes it easy to bundle these things together, these actions together. But it also creates a meaningful way to do error tracking, and I'll show you how now. So the first one is we're going to call this the actual process. Then we're going to create another scope action for the error handler. And then we're going to create another one for finalize. Now, because this is the parent flow, finalize isn't going to really do much in this scenario because it's a very basic scenario, but you might want a certain logic to only trigger on successful runs of this flow. So we're now going to tell the error handler, if we go to configure run after, we're going to tell it to only run after the process has failed. So if the process hasn't failed, this scope won't run. It would be completely omitted. And then the finalize, we want to say this should only run when the error handler is skipped. In other words, if that doesn't run because the process didn't fail, then the finalize bit runs. So in this case, it's not going to do much, but I'm just going to put it in there in any event. Next thing we want to do is start passing information about the flows to the other flows. So as you call the child, you want to pass it the information about the parent. And as you get a response from the child, you pass the information from the child to the parent. So when you troubleshoot, it's very easy to go to the actual flow runs. Now, I did show this in a session about 2.5 years ago or so, but there's some additional bits that I'm adding to this now. But that passing the flow information, I know I did show in a session before. So in essence, where we're calling this child flow, we're going to just add a whole new property. And we're going to say we're going to be calling it the leave ID, and this is what we did before. But now we're going to just also pass it a flow property to pass all the information about that flow in an easily accessible way. So for that, we'll have the workflow function to get the flow name again. I don't know why that's not showing. Try that again.
Sounds like your paste.
I can turn off my camera.
Not face.
Paste, not paste. There we go.
All right, so there's workflow, and again we're grabbing the tags property and then the flow display name. We're then using the concat function to actually concatenate the URL for this flow so that it's easily accessible. And we're then getting the flow run URL from the environment variables. I'll show that to you just in a second as well. And then we're getting the environment name, the flows, or sorry, it's flows in the URL, and then the actual flow run URL. So I'll show that to you in action in a second. I'll also add these things later on to the channel. Maybe Jonathan, maybe I think we should add this to the channel, the actual
And the description.
snippets.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we could start doing that. Then we can add that to the channel, and then you can easily just access it from there. Right, so that's going to call the child flow. It's going to pass all the information to it. Let's save this and then go and update the child flow, because we're going to be doing a very similar thing on that side. All right, so first let's also go and create an error or a variable, or just copy and paste. Okay, that's happy. We're passing the JSON. We don't need any additional information there. There's the condition, and don't need anything there, so we can go and add the scopes. Let's add the first scope. Which is process, and we're going to move everything that has to do with the logic. And it's similar to a try and catch thing that we want to happen in that bit. And even the parse JSON, there could be something wrong in the JSON, and the parse JSON could fail. So you want to add as much into that as possible. Unfortunately, you can't add the initialized variable into it. So just be careful of what you do in the initialized variable, because that's going to be an unhandled error, essentially then. So we want to add that in there. We're going to add an error handler. And then we're going to do a final. Okay, so let's start from the top. So over here, we're going to say, sorry, we first need to do the configure run after. So we want to say the error handler should trigger if the process has failed and not when it is successful. And the finalize should happen when the error handler is skipped, not successful or failed. Okay, so that makes sense. We can move the response into the finalize section because that only needs to trigger when everything is happy with life. We can go and let's just check over here. So all of that's fine. Yes. All right, so what we're going to do now is just add a little bit more information into the body of this. Now, what I like to do is to create another compose action, and it's easy to keep track of and also copy and paste. So for that, I'm just going to add the response afterwards because the compose is now essentially providing the body to the response. So it makes it easier to track. Right, so we're going to give this JSON to the response, and in this case, it's going to be success. The error message is going to be blank. The flow is, again, we're going to pass the flow information to it. So when the parent, you're troubleshooting and you're going to the flow parent run, you can easily just go to the instance of the child run that caused this error. So that's working fine, and we can just write that entire compose into the body of the response. And you'll see that I'm using the H3P response instead of the respond to power-ups of flow, because then you can just put JSON in the body, where in the power-ups response, you can't do that. So just using an H3P response, but it makes no difference. It works exactly the same way. Cool. So we can now go and copy and paste this. Let's just first copy the compose. And then we can go and copy the response as well. Okay, so for this, we want to rename come on. Just want to get rid of that. The rest stays exactly the same. It's just the component input that we change. I just want to make sure that the body updated. I probably wouldn't have. So I just point that to the right compose. And here we're going to say it was a failure, and the error message was that variable. So if we go to our error message, we're going to write that error message into the variable, or into that error message. All right, and just going to check quickly. I think this should do what we want it to do. You'll see that the error log table that I created initially, I don't write into the error log from the function or from the child flow. I prefer to do that in the event flow. So the child stays as dumb as possible. We don't want as little as logic in there, or little as possible functions that shouldn't be in it. That should be like just purely for what it is intended to do. And then the parent flow writes into the error logs, so if there's a problem, because you might also want to perform other functions if there's an error in that specific flow. Okay, so in the parent flow, we're back in the parent flow. We can now add a condition to go and say, if the result from the child flow is equal to success, then do nothing. Otherwise, we want to go and write that variable. We want to create an error message. So yeah, you can have, depending on what that child flow does, you can have a custom error message specifically for that flow. And you can have specific checks in the child flow that would update the error message, and then you can bring that forth to the parent. But in this case, I'm just going to take the whole error message from the child flow and just write it into the parent flow. So you're just bubbling that up to the front, essentially. So we're saying that we're going to write that entire error message into there, and then we need to cause an error. How do we cause an error?
Divide by 0.
Divide by 0. Okay, so let's just say there, cause error. And this is going to cause this whole process scope to fail. And that's going to trigger the error handler. There's nothing in the trigger handler at the moment. But what we want to do here is to actually update that error logs table in database that we created earlier. So what did I select there now? Database, add a new row. There we go. I don't know what I chose earlier there while I was talking. So in the error logs, we're simply going to say you can split the title and the description if you wanted to. For now, I'm just going to write a whole error message into that. I'm going to also in the description, do I have a description here somewhere? Message. So there's the error message. And then you can have a status to just say that this is the default of unassigned, so that you can have a business process to go and assign it to somebody, a support technician, or business owner of the application, or whatever the case may be. And then you can also write the link that we got back. So we can say there's the flow run URL that we're now writing into that record. So when you get the message in the error log, you don't have to open up Power Automate and go and search for it. You click on that link and it takes you directly into the flow run that is failed. Okay, and that should do what we wanted to do. Just going to go into the child again, make sure that that divide by 0 is there. And let's go and test this. It's not often you want an error to happen. Okay, so we're going to the event flow to see if that's triggered. Okay, so that last triggered 17 minutes ago. So that's not the, okay, here's one from 2 seconds ago. It failed, which isn't good. What I mean is the parent flow shouldn't fail. It's because it should handle that error. So let's see what it didn't like here. Property is not supported on. Do I first need to pass that? Didn't think that would be necessary. It wasn't necessary in the test. Let's go and check that quickly. Can somebody play me some elevator music while I'm just checking something here? Okay, let's go into the child flow and see what that did. How could it run successfully? It ran successfully because it handled the error. So this is important to notice, and this is a good thing. The fact that this flow didn't fail is actually good. It means that it just handled the error. The moment that the flow fails, it means it didn't know what to do with the error. Where over here, you'll see that this scope failed, which we intended it to do. It then had this next scope trigger, and then it was successful. So the flow run was successful, even though the content failed. So it was a handled error. So let's see what happened with this. Oh, I see. It's not. I can pick this up as JSON. So well, that's fine. Oh, I didn't put this in JSON. That makes sense. Sorry. So yeah, sorry. There's a curly bracket over there that that should be there. So that's got all of that, and yeah, that's fine. So that's valid JSON now. Just want to make sure that the output is right. Compose to, yes, and then the same over here. That's better. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so let's see, wait for that to trigger. It's nice, the Dataverse triggers are a lot faster than SharePoint and SQL and all of these sort of things. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah.
And now you mentioned that station.
Yeah.
I gave it stage fright. It's like, I don't know what to do.
There we go.
Okay, so it succeeded even though it failed. So, but again, it's a handled error. So that's what you want to do. You want to handle your errors. You don't want it to just fail silently in the background. Okay, so let's start with the error log, because we hope we got an error log. Right, so there's one, and it says error running that flow, child leave process request. And the nice thing is it gives us this URL. So if we open this URL now, it's going to take us directly into the flow that failed. You don't have to open up Power Automate and go and look for it and search and hope for the right one. This is the actual one that failed.
Oh.
So from here, I can go and have a look and think about troubleshooting now. So now you're saying, well, leave request, oof, which flow called this one? Well, it's easy. We can go and have a look at the data that it got, and that's the flow that called it. So in the trigger, there's the flow that called it. So I can go and have a look at that one as well. Just open that one up. So here's the flow, the record event flow that triggered. So you can get context exactly what record did it trigger on, what data did it pass to the child flow, and then open up the child flow and see exactly what happened there. So we can go and see that this got an error message. This is in the modern designer now. Okay, and there it tells me it's division by 0. So it's a lot easier to troubleshoot. You can jump between the parent and the child flow as many times as you want to go and find the error, fix it, and then make sure you understand what needs to be updated in the data as well, because that's a big risk. A lot of the times we're doing changes in data with these flows, and if they fail, you're essentially sitting with incomplete or corrupt data. And so you need to be very mindful about when a flow fails, what was it supposed to do? What's going to happen if you just rerun this thing now? Is it going to break it even further? Is it going to corrupt the data? But this this gives you a much better view of which parts of the solution failed and which parts of the data could have been affected. And you can then take it just one step further and then just simply have an email that sends you an email, or an email trigger in a flow that sends you an email when an error log gets created. And you can then have simple statuses in here to go and assign it to your team, make sure somebody looks out for these errors, close it. It just creates such an awesome user experience. If one of your users get an error, and without reporting it, somebody in your team contacts them and says, Mr. User, I can see you got an error. Would you mind us having a look at your machine, or whatever the case may be? And this actually makes that possible. So in here, you can go and assign that to somebody else. You can change the owner, you can change the status, and so on and so forth.
That's cool.
That is really cool.
Right, so any questions? Anything that you want me to delve into a little bit further?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think this was very helpful. Really, thanks for sharing this, David.
Sure.
It's just such a more elegant way to handle it at the end of the day.
I like the fact that you can URL directly to the
Yes.
slow run.
Yeah,
Instead of going to this long run.
trying to get to this page, trying to figure out which one it is, because if you're running a couple hundred flows a day, it's a nightmare to try and find.
So I just want to quickly show the outputs of this workflow expression. So I'm just going to write it into a compose in the trigger, and then I'm just going to run it again, because it's quite handy. It's quite useful. There's quite a lot in there. Okay. I'll delete that one.
This person will always have to use agents.
The reason why I was
What?
taking out.
What's that?
Saying you have a staff member that takes this much sick leave is the reason why companies are looking at AI.
Okay, why didn't that? I did publish. Where's that change? What happened? What happened here? There we go. I'm pretty sure I published it, but I will publish it again. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I have picked up a timing issue between publishing in the modern editor in Power Automate and then accessing it in the old editor in Power Automate. And sometimes the changes isn't there. I've got a sneaky suspicion I know why. Okay, so did actually run. So that's the outputs of that workflow function. So there's the flow display name. There is the environment it's running on. This is the actual environment ID, the flow ID. Where's the who created this thing, all of these sort of things. So this is actually quite a useful piece of information as well. So there's the workflow ID. So that's the one that, if I'm not mistaken, that we use to populate the URL so that you can just simply click on it. And in action, yeah. So, sorry, it's getting that from the child record. So that's not from that workflow record or workflow function. But here we go. That's the actual run. Oh, so it just uses the run. Sorry, there's a run property in there that has different parameters. So we didn't look at those now, but yeah, so that gets it from the actual run property, and then it's got a name that it builds the URL with. So I'll just show you the environmental settings that we use to populate that flow run URL, and then if there's no other questions, then I think we're pretty much done.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, David. Any questions for David from anyone in the room? Perfect. Thanks, David.
Pleasure, man. Just want to show you this. So typically we'll just have an environment settings in the environment variables, and then you can have generic things like, in this case, what's the URL of the flow run environment? So over here you can see it's usflow microsoft.com/manage/environments. And then that just gets concatenated into the URL from the flow run URL, and then you're able to access that flow.
Okay.
Very cool.
Good.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, David. This is fantastic. Okay, perfect. I think that is everything.
Has the
Anything
food
anyone
arrived?
wants to add or talk about or mention before we close off?
Please submit sessions.
Yes.
Submit sessions on Sessionize if you want to speak at the meetup. It's a good warm up for the bootcamp.
Yeah, it's always great to hear from the community, hear from people, it's about presenting the whole time.
We'll
And it can be about anything, really.
go or apps related.
But, well, anything. Yeah,
All right, good.
awesome. Well, thank everyone. Have a fantastic evening. There's drinks and food outside. Lovely for the bit, and the mates community should be fine.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a good Cheers. Thanks, David. All those online.
Cheers, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.